When I say I am not one of them stylists, I stand on it, and you is not finna approach me as if I'm one of them stylists. I truly understand that some people really do be giving these clients the runaround. They play games, they tell them to come at such and such time, and then they stand them up. But like I said, baby, I'm not one of them, and my clients gonna forever vouch for me.
Dad, I'm so excited. That's what she texted him. 4 words. Bright, full of hope. Cameron Price had been dreaming of this moment for months. A chance to open her own salon, to turn her passion for beauty into a business she could call hers. She was just 21, young, talented, loved. But by the next morning, Cameron's family would be standing over her hospital bed, staring at a version of their daughter they couldn't recognize. Her mother would later say, "Seeing your daughter with her brains hanging out of her head, that's a hard pill to swallow."
Cameron Olivia Price, she was shot and killed Tuesday morning. Here's a picture of her. The 21-year-old was on vacation visiting from South Carolina.
No one deserves to die like that.
Parents Creighton and Jesse Price can't stop seeing their little girl.
Seeing your daughter laying in the hospital bed with her brains hanging out of her head. My God, that is a hard pill to swallow.
It was early April in the heart of downtown Atlanta. 3 a.m. A car pulls out of a parking lot near Pryor Street, just blocks from the neon-lit Magic City Strip Club. Inside, Cameron and her boyfriend. They're headed home after a night out. No signs of trouble. No reason to look over their shoulders. But then, another car pulls up. Slow. Close. No warning. No words. Gunfire erupts. Bullets tear through the passenger side, the side where Cameron is sitting. Her boyfriend, stunned and bleeding from shattered glass, hits the gas, racing toward the highway. Somewhere along I-75 North, near Memorial Drive, he calls for help. Cameron is barely breathing. She'll never make it home. And as her family wakes up to frantic calls and unanswered questions, a community is about to lose a young woman whose life was just beginning. But who pulled the trigger? And why would anyone want Cameron dead? What came next would only deepen the mystery and leave her family begging for justice that, for months, felt out of reach. Welcome to True Crime Tales HQ. Before we get into the full story, if you care about justice, victim advocacy, and real stories that deserve to be told, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We dive deep into the cases that mainstream media forgets, and your support helps these stories reach the people who need to hear them. Let's make sure Cameron's story doesn't fade into silence. You know how some people just light up a room? Not with noise, not with attention, but with presence? That was Cameron Olivia Price. She was born and raised in Chester, South Carolina, a quiet town, small enough that everybody knew who she was, or at least knew someone who did. Her parents, Creighton and Jesse, still call her our little girl, even though Cameron had grown into a young woman with big city dreams. She was 21 years old, just getting started in life, but she already had a plan. She wasn't lost, she wasn't drifting. She knew where she wanted to go. Cameron was a hairstylist, and not the kind who just does it for a paycheck. She had vision. She'd just gotten her license and was building a loyal client base back home. Her ambition wasn't just to do hair. It was to open her own salon, mentor other young women, and create something she could be proud of. Something that belonged to her. Everyone who met her remembered her for the same reasons. She was warm, generous, and real. She had that rare combination of confidence and kindness. She knew who she was, but she made space for other people to shine, too. Her friends called her the glue in the group. The one who checked in when others forgot. The one who showed up when nobody else would. She made people feel safe, seen, heard. And family? Family was everything to Cameron. She stayed close to her parents, texted her dad constantly. That's why that last message, "Dad, I'm so excited," hit so hard. It wasn't just a text. It was the sound of a future rising. And within hours, it would become the last thing she ever said to him. Cameron wasn't perfect. Nobody is. But she was deeply loved, deeply grounded, and full of purpose. She didn't hang out in dangerous circles. She wasn't running with the wrong crowd. She was just a girl visiting Atlanta for a quick trip, tagging along with her boyfriend, trying to enjoy a night out. And for reasons no one can still quite explain, she never made it back. It started off like any ordinary trip. Cameron Price, 21 years old, had been texting her father about her dreams, her goals, her next move. She was building momentum, planning her future as a hairstylist, talking about opening a salon, filled with hope. That kind of energy that makes the air feel lighter. In early April 2023, she took a short trip to Atlanta from her hometown in Chester, South Carolina. A few days to visit friends, spend time with her romantic partner, and enjoy the city's energy. She wasn't running from anything. There were no cryptic texts, no arguments, just a quick trip to clear her head and reconnect. On the night of April 3rd, she and her boyfriend ended up at Magic City, Atlanta's most iconic strip club. It's a place known for its high-profile guests, booming music, and hypnotic neon lights. It was his scene, not really hers. Cameron wasn't the type to be out all night, but she went anyway. Maybe to be with him. Maybe just to experience something different. Sometime after 2:30 a.m., they left the club. Surveillance footage later confirmed that their car pulled out onto Pryor Street in downtown Atlanta, heading toward the I-75 on-ramp. Cameron was in the passenger seat. Her boyfriend was driving. No one else was in the vehicle. That's when it happened. Another car approached from behind, fast, then pulled up directly beside them. Close. Too close. No one said a word. No windows rolled down for a conversation. No honking. No threats. Just sudden, sharp flashes of light, gunfire. Several rounds tore through the side of their vehicle, aiming directly at Cameron's seat. Her window shattered. Cameron was hit. Her boyfriend, though not struck by bullets, was injured by flying glass. He panicked and did what most would. He drove straight onto the highway, fast, northbound on I-75 toward the Memorial Drive exit, toward Grady Memorial Hospital. There was no time to call 911. No time to think. Just blood, panic, and desperation. Cameron was still alive when they arrived. Doctors rushed her into surgery. Her family, notified in the middle of the night, raced to the hospital. Her mother later described the scene in raw detail. Seeing your daughter laying in the hospital bed with her brains hanging out of her head. My God, that's a hard pill to swallow. Cameron didn't survive the operation. She was pronounced dead in the early hours of April 4th. There was no clear motive, no theft, no road rage, no confrontation inside the club. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't a drive-by in the traditional sense. Just a precise, deliberate shooting from one car into another, directly aimed at Cameron. And just like that, her bright life was over. But for her family and for investigators, the silence after the shooting was almost worse than the violence itself. There were no known enemies, no public social media drama, no visible trail. Who would want to kill a 21-year-old woman with no criminal record, no known beef, and no warning? For weeks, the case remained wide open. No suspects, no arrests, just pain, unanswered questions, and a slow, growing fear that whoever did it might never be caught. Until quietly, something finally broke. In the days following the shooting, Atlanta police found themselves under pressure. The public was grieving. The victim's family was demanding answers. And a 21-year-old woman with no criminal history had been killed while simply standing outside a nightclub. Detectives began their work on Spring Street with what little they had. The surveillance footage from nearby businesses, witness statements from stunned bystanders, and a 911 call that painted a picture of chaos. Investigators knew they were dealing with a drive-by shooting. But who had done it and why? Cameron hadn't been in any known conflicts. She wasn't the intended target, or so it seemed. One of the first breaks came from the street cameras lining the downtown corridor. They captured a dark sedan speeding away from the scene moments after the gunfire. A partial license plate was visible, not enough to immediately identify a suspect, but enough to narrow the search. Back in South Carolina, Croton Price was doing his own kind of investigation. He spoke with Cameron's friends, retraced her movements, and pushed her case across social media. His posts quickly began gaining traction, and soon #JusticeForCameron started trending. The outcry reached beyond Chester and Atlanta. It echoed across the country. Then came a pivotal tip. A woman who had been near the scene that night reached out to authorities after seeing one of Croton's posts. She described the vehicle in more detail. A Dodge Charger with a broken taillight, possibly driven by someone wearing a hoodie. Her description aligned with what detectives had pulled from surveillance, giving them enough to start tracking similar vehicles. Meanwhile, forensic experts analyzed shell casings from the scene. The bullets matched a weapon used in a separate shooting just weeks prior, tied to known gang activity in the Atlanta area. It was a chilling possibility that Cameron might have been caught in the crossfire of something much bigger. Through coordination with gang task forces, investigators uncovered a local crew known for carrying out retaliatory hits in nightclub zones, a group that had reportedly been active the night Cameron died. A confidential informant eventually came forward, revealing the name of the suspected shooter, a young man trying to earn rank in a local set. But the motive remained murky. Was it a mistake? Was someone else the target? The pieces were coming together, but law enforcement was still careful. They needed more than street rumors. They needed hard evidence. And they were about to get it from the shooter himself. But here's the thing. Cameron was more than a headline, more than a name in a case file. She was a daughter, a friend, someone with dreams. And the truth is, if we don't keep saying her name, if we let this story fall through the cracks like so many others, the system forgets. The streets forget. And the people responsible? They count on that silence. So if you're still watching, don't scroll past her. Take a second to share this video, drop a comment, or even just like it. It helps more than you know. Cameron mattered. Let's make sure she still does. The arrest didn't happen in a dramatic foot chase or a middle-of-the-night sting. It came quietly on November 28, 2023, 8 months after Cameron's death. And when U.S. Marshals finally brought 19-year-old Datewan Deontay Allen into custody in Louisville, Kentucky, it felt almost anticlimactic. But for Cameron's family, it was the moment the numbness cracked open. Her father said, "We'd been waiting for this day, but nothing about it felt like justice yet." Allen didn't resist arrest. He didn't speak to the media. He didn't even look up. He was extradited back to Georgia, where the charges waiting for him were serious. Felony murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, criminal street gang activity, and violation of the RICO Act. Prosecutors wasted no time labeling it what it was, a gang hit, an organized act of retaliation that just happened to end Cameron's life instead of whoever the real target was. The courtroom was packed during his first appearance. No family from Allen's side showed. But Cameron's mother sat in the front row, clutching her daughter's photo like it was armor. The DA didn't mince words. This wasn't a mistake, she told reporters. This was a calculated act of violence. Allen pled not guilty, setting the stage for a potentially long trial. His defense team has already begun hinting at mistaken identity, weak surveillance, and no weapon recovered. Online, speculation is boiling over. Some people think Allen is a scapegoat. Others claim he's the fall guy for a larger, still active gang operation in Atlanta. And there are whispers, especially on Reddit and in Atlanta-based forums, that Allen wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. That maybe, just maybe, someone else is still out there. But while the legal system argues, the grief remains constant. The trial is expected to begin in late 2025. Until then, Cameron's father has only one question echoing through every sleepless night. If she wasn't the target, why didn't they stop shooting? In the months following Cameron Olivia Price's death, her name echoed far beyond Atlanta. She wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't famous. But somehow her story stuck, maybe because of her age, or the way she died, or the cruel randomness of it all. Maybe because she reminded people of someone they knew. Or maybe because she reminded them of themselves. Her funeral was held in Chester, South Carolina, her hometown. Hundreds showed up. Some didn't even know her. The sanctuary at Calvary Baptist Church overflowed with mourners, and outside, a group of teenage girls who followed her on Instagram lit candles and held photos. Her coffin was white. Her best friend placed a makeup brush inside before they closed it. Cameron's father, Croton Price, made a decision shortly after her burial. He wasn't going to let her death get buried in court dates or drowned in legal jargon. He began speaking publicly, first on Facebook, then in interviews with local TV, then CNN. He didn't cry during those talks, but his voice always broke in the same place. When he read the last text she sent him, "Dad, I'm so excited." In the months that followed, he helped launch a grassroots campaign that began as a GoFundMe to support grieving families of gun violence victims. That project eventually evolved into Cameron's Voice, a nonprofit pushing for stricter regulation of gang activity, better protection for bystanders, and survivor support legislation across Georgia. One of their first proposals? Requiring nightclub venues in high-risk zones to hire licensed off-duty officers, not just private security. But perhaps the most significant ripple came in the form of proposed legislation. A bipartisan bill introduced in the Georgia State Senate titled Cameron's Law. The law would require immediate mandatory police access to all external security footage from nightlife businesses in the event of a violent crime, eliminating red tape and delay. It hasn't passed yet, but the support is building. Back at Magic City, the strip club where she was shot, the managers placed a small plaque behind the bar in her memory. It simply reads, "In memory of Cameron Olivia Price. You should have made it home." Today, Cameron's friends still post her photos on her Instagram page. Her account, once full of style tutorials and selfies, now serves as a digital vigil. And in Chester, her high school retired her locker, still taped with glittery stickers, still with a post-it note that reads, "You got this girl," in her handwriting. The trial of Datewan Allen will unfold, evidence will be picked apart, and reporters will try to decide what version of the story sticks. But for Cameron's family, the narrative doesn't change. She was not the intended target. She was not involved in gangs. She was not supposed to die that night. She was just a girl who loved doing hair, who had a dream, who texted her dad before stepping out, thinking she'd be home in a few hours. And, instead, she became a headline. Every name in a headline has a story behind it, and Cameron Olivia Price's story is one that reminds us how fragile life can be. She was 21. She had a plan. She was just starting to live. And in a single senseless moment, everything stopped, not because of something she did, but because of where she was standing. There's no neat ending to stories like this. No perfect justice. No words that can bring someone back. But what we can do is remember. We remember her name. We remember her laughter, the dream of her own salon, the way she texted her dad that night. We remember that violence doesn't always come with warning signs. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere, and it leaves families picking up pieces they never dropped. If this story moved you, don't just scroll past. Share it. Talk about it. Say her name. Because someone somewhere needs to be reminded, this didn't have to happen. And maybe if enough of us care, maybe it won't happen to the next girl with a dream. Cameron Olivia Price. April 3rd, 2023. Gone, but never forgotten. April 1st, 11:43 p.m. Saad Robinson's phone goes dark for the last time. Her location, the basement of a house of horrors. In 12 hours, a jogger will find her severed leg. In 72 hours, more body parts will surface. But right now, in this moment, a 19-year-old girl with dreams of flying fighter jets is taking her final breath because she said yes to the wrong man.
A romantic encounter
All she wanted was love.
with a monstrous end.
Who the would do something like this to my beautiful baby?
The death and dismemberment of 19-year-old Sade Robinson
It just breaks my heart.
is the stuff of nightmares.
We still don't have all of her remains.
This week on Open Record,
And there was somebody randomly walking past the lake and saw it.
the evidence scattered across 2 states,
Our investigators have worked around the clock.
and why prosecutors say it all points to one man,
This sick son of a is gonna pay.
accused of luring an innocent woman into a date with death.
Welcome back to True Crime Tales HQ, the only place where we don't just tell stories, we resurrect voices that were silenced and illuminate truths that powerful people want buried. Before we begin today's journey into darkness, I need something from you. That little thumbs up button? It's not just a click. It's your vote that justice matters. Hit subscribe, because every single one of you makes it possible for us to dive deeper, investigate harder, and bring these stories the attention they deserve. And that notification bell? Turn it on. Because the cases we cover, they're not just entertainment. They're warnings. They're lessons. They're the difference between recognizing danger and becoming its next victim. If today's story moves you, if it angers you, if it opens your eyes, share it. Your share isn't just engagement. It could be the warning that saves a life. Today, we're not just telling you about a crime. We're exposing a system that failed so catastrophically, so repeatedly, that it allowed a documented predator to evolve from domestic abuser to calculated killer. This is the story of how red flags were ignored, how warning signs were dismissed, and how one woman's excitement about a first date became a community's worst nightmare. This is the story they don't want you to remember, but we're going to make sure you never forget. Let's begin. But before we dive into the darkness, before we confront the monster who stole her future, you need to know who Sade Robinson really was. Because she was so much more than a victim. Born on May 10, 2004, in Vicksburg, Mississippi, Sade Carlina Robinson came into this world with a light that everyone could see. When she was barely 2 years old, her mother Sheena Scarborough brought her to Milwaukee, searching for a better life. Sheena never imagined she was raising a daughter who would become the heartbeat of everywhere she went. At Pizza Shuttle on Milwaukee's East Side, where Sade worked as a cashier, she wasn't just an employee. She was family. Manager Justin Romano described her perfectly. Very outgoing. She would talk to everybody here. She was always there to lighten the mood. Customers didn't just come for the pizza. They came to see Sade's smile. She knew them by name. She remembered their orders, their stories, their kids' birthdays. She elevated people. Her coworker Quincy Alexander, who worked alongside her for nearly 4 years, called her a friend. When she went missing, he said his heart just dropped. He saw all his coworkers crying. Former owner Mark Gold had invited Sade to her graduation from Milwaukee Area Technical College. He was shocked when he got that worried text from an employee. Sometimes people miss shifts, he said, but not Sade. Because Sade had plans. Big plans. She was studying criminal justice, about to graduate with her degree. But her dreams reached even higher than that. She wanted to serve her country. The United States Air Force was calling her name. She dreamed of flying fighter jets, of protecting the skies above America. Julia Ferrara, whose son Benicio worked with Sade, watched their friendship bloom. They vibe, they listened to music, they laughed, they talked about everything, she said. When Sade disappeared, Benicio was devastated. But Julia knew what Sade would tell him. I don't want you to be sad. I want you to keep living your life. Sade was a girl who always laughed, always smiled, always made customers and employees feel welcomed. She lit up every room she entered, which makes what happened next even more heartbreaking. Because on Monday, April 1st, 2024, this vibrant, independent, driven young woman was excited about something that should have been perfectly normal. A first date. She had met someone who seemed charming. Someone who suggested dinner at a seafood restaurant. Someone who made her feel special enough to ask her mother for $15. Unusual for Saad, who was always so independent. Sheena Scarborough was happy to send the money. She had no idea it would be their last conversation, because the man Saad was getting ready to meet had been planning this moment for much longer than she could have imagined. Coming up, we'll walk through Saada's final day, hour by hour. We'll see how a routine first date became a nightmare. And we'll meet the monster who had been hunting for the perfect victim. April 1st, 2024 started like any other day for Saad. She was at her apartment building on Commerce Street, chatting with staff. She was excited, more excited than they'd seen her in a while. She had a date that night. A first date. 4:15 p.m. Saada's phone lights up with text messages. The number belongs to Maxwell Anderson, though she doesn't know the darkness behind that name yet. They're arranging dinner. Anderson suggests the Twisted Fisherman restaurant on Canal Street. "Are you hungry?" he writes. "I need to stop at Twisted Fisherman to pick up my W-2 from last year, and we could eat there first." The detail about the W-2 form, it seems so innocent, so practical. But it's calculated. You see, Anderson used to work at Twisted Fisherman. He knows the layout, the staff, the cameras. He's choosing familiar ground. Saad responds, "Okay, and yes, I love seafood." Those would be some of her last text messages. 5:20 p.m. Surveillance cameras at Twisted Fisherman capture the moment Saad Robinson walks through the door. She's wearing ripped jeans and a white shirt, the same outfit her family would later find burned in her car. She spots Anderson at the bar. He's already there, has been waiting. He told the bartender this was a first date, proud, almost boastful about it. The staff would later remember this detail, because Anderson used to work there. They knew him. For the next hour and 4 minutes, they sit together, eating, drinking, talking. The surveillance footage shows what looks like a normal first date. Saad is animated, engaged. Anderson is attentive. She has no idea she's sitting across from a man who has been planning her murder for weeks. 6:30 p.m. They leave Twisted Fisherman together. Saad drives. It's her 2020 Honda Civic. They head to Duke's on Water, a nearby bar on the trendy Water Street district. At Duke's, Saad sends a Snapchat to her friends. A simple photo from the bar. She's still excited, still having fun. It's the last image her friends will ever receive from her. What Saad doesn't know is that her phone is being tracked. Not by police. They don't even know she's in danger yet. But by the Life 360 app, a location tracker her friends use to stay connected. 8:30 p.m. They leave Duke's together. The digital trail shows them traveling south to Anderson's home on 39th and Oklahoma Avenue. This is where the timeline becomes horrifying. For the next 4 hours and 18 minutes, Saada's phone remains stationary at Maxwell Anderson's address. For hours and 18 minutes, in a house where police would later find blood on the walls, restraints in the basement, and what investigators described as a sex dungeon. We can only imagine what those hours contained. What Saad endured. What Anderson did to her in that basement he had been preparing for weeks. 12:48 a.m., April 2nd. Something changes. Saada's phone starts moving again. But Saad is no longer able to move it herself. The phone travels north through downtown Milwaukee. It passes near Saada's apartment building, cruel irony, so close to home. Then it continues north to Pleasant Valley Park along the Milwaukee River. 1:33 a.m. The phone stops at Pleasant Valley Park for 27 minutes. Investigators believe this is where Anderson disposed of some of Saada's remains. 2 a.m. The phone leaves Pleasant Valley Park and heads south to Warnemont Park in Cudahy, arriving at 2:45 a.m. 2:53 a.m. Surveillance cameras from nearby Cudahy High School capture a car heading toward the pump house at Warnemont Park. The same park where in just hours, a morning jogger will make a discovery that will change everything. 3:02 a.m. The cameras capture something else. a human figure descending the bluff toward the beach level, carrying something, disposing of something. 4:31 a.m., the vehicle leaves Warnemont Park. Minutes later, at 4:35 a.m., Saad Robinson's phone loses battery and goes dark forever. But Maxwell Anderson isn't done. 7:30 a.m., a car explodes into flames in an alley behind Patricia Newton Powell's house near 30th and Lisbon Avenue. She calls 911, watches the airbags explode, hears the car alarm screaming. It's Saada's Honda Civic. Anderson has torched it, trying to destroy the evidence. But he's made a mistake. Surveillance cameras from the Milwaukee County Transit System capture Anderson getting on a nearby bus shortly after the car fire. He's wearing a gray hoodie and backpack, exactly matching what investigators will find in his home. Same morning, different location. A jogger runs through Warnemont Park in Cudahy. It's a beautiful morning by Lake Michigan. The sun is rising. The birds are singing. Then they see it. A human leg, severed cleanly just below the hip. Pink nail polish still gleaming on the toes. Saad Robinson's final hours weren't just a first date that went wrong. They were a carefully orchestrated murder, planned weeks in advance by a predator who had been hunting for the perfect victim. And he thought he had committed the perfect crime. But Maxwell Anderson had no idea that digital evidence would be his downfall. Phone records, surveillance cameras, and location tracking would paint a picture so clear, so damning, that even he couldn't talk his way out of it. I need to pause here for just a moment. What you've just heard, the timeline, the planning, the calculated evil, this isn't fiction. This actually happened. To a real person. To someone's daughter. If this story is hitting you as hard as it should, do something about it right now. Hit that like button, not for me, but because stories like Saada's need to be heard. Subscribe, because every subscription helps us expose predators like Maxwell Anderson. And share this. Seriously. Share it with someone who dates online. Share it with someone who needs to see the warning signs. Your share could literally save someone's life. Because what comes next, what Maxwell Anderson did to prepare for this murder, it will haunt you. But you need to hear it. Coming up, we meet the monster behind the plan. Maxwell Anderson's shocking criminal history, the house of horrors police discovered, and the confidential informant who revealed Anderson had been planning this murder for an entire month. Maxwell Stephen Anderson, 33 years old, bartender, charming smile, and beneath it all, a predator who had been planning murder for weeks. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a date gone wrong. This was a carefully orchestrated hunt, and Saad Robinson was the prey. Let's start with what police found when they searched Anderson's house on April 4th, just 2 days after Saada's leg was discovered on that beach. Blood. Blood on the bedding in one of the bedrooms. Blood on the walls leading toward the basement. Several gasoline containers in the garage. But that was just the beginning. In the basement, investigators found what multiple law enforcement sources described as a sex dungeon. But it gets worse. Much worse. According to newly unsealed search warrants, police found women's clothing hidden between basement support beams and tucked into foundation walls. Underwear. Personal items. A Crown Royal bag containing an ID belonging to a 27-year-old woman who wasn't Saad Robinson. They found notebooks. Notebooks filled with other women's names and personal information about them. Like a hunting ledger. A large black axe hanging prominently on his living room wall. Multiple firearms. Hidden USB drives. And when they searched his car, they found what appeared to be blood in plain sight on the front passenger door speaker. But the most chilling discovery came from a confidential informant who had been inside Anderson's house on March 5th, nearly a month before he killed Saad Robinson. This informant told police that Anderson had shown him the basement. Proudly, like a tour guide showing off his masterpiece. The basement was covered floor to ceiling with painter's tarps, taped to every surface. There was a sanitation sink, 3 saws, and Anderson Anderson told this informant exactly what he was planning to do. According to the warrant, Anderson said he planned to bring Robinson to his residence, pull a handgun on her, and bring her down to the basement. He would then shoot Robinson and dismember her body in the room they were in, before disposing of Robinson's body throughout the city. A month before their first date, Maxwell Anderson was already planning Saad Robinson's murder, planning exactly how he would kill her, planning exactly how he would cut her apart, planning exactly how he would scatter her remains across Milwaukee. This young woman, excited about a seafood dinner, never had a chance. But who was Maxwell Anderson before he became a killer? His background reads like a textbook case of escalating violence. 2014, disorderly conduct conviction in Waukesha County after an incident with a family member. 2015, Door County domestic abuse, intimidating a witness, and criminal damage to property. Court records show he was accused of shoving a woman, smashing her cell phone, and breaking things in the kitchen. 2019, second offense, drunk driving conviction. 2022, driving with a suspended license. A pattern of violence against women. A pattern of escalation. A pattern that should have been a warning. Anderson grew up with privilege. His father ran a multi-million-dollar insurance brokerage with offices in multiple states. The family had ties to Waukesha County's elite. Anderson attended Catholic Memorial and Pewaukee High Schools. The family owned a nearly $3 million lake home in Oconomowoc. But Maxwell chose a different path. He worked as a bartender at various Milwaukee establishments, the Rave, Victor's nightclub, and yes, Twisted Fisherman, where he would later lure Saad Robinson for their final date. Anderson even served briefly in the Navy from April 2011 to January 2012, though it's unclear why his service ended so abruptly. This was a man who understood how to charm people, how to gain their trust, how to make a 19-year-old college student excited about a first date. But when a friend visited Anderson's home and he offered to show them the basement, Anderson himself said, "It's creepy down there." Even he knew what he had created. The most disturbing part? Anderson thought he had planned the perfect crime. He had the location. He had the tools. He had the disposal plan. He even had the cleanup equipment, those gasoline containers to burn her car, destroy the evidence. What he didn't count on was technology, phone tracking, surveillance cameras, digital footprints that would lead investigators straight to his door. When police arrested Maxwell Anderson on April 4th during a traffic stop near his home, they thought they had caught a killer. What they didn't realize was they had caught something much worse. Because the evidence suggests Saad Robinson wasn't Anderson's first victim. She was just the first one they found. Coming up, the search that horrified even seasoned investigators. The community's explosive response. And the question that still haunts Milwaukee. How many other women did Maxwell Anderson hunt before he found Saad Robinson? The horror of what Maxwell Anderson did to Saad Robinson wasn't fully revealed in one terrible moment. It unfolded slowly, piece by piece, across the streets and shorelines of Milwaukee County. Each discovery more devastating than the last. April 2nd, 7:30 a.m. The first discovery. A morning jogger at Warnermont Park in Cudahy finds a human leg, severed cleanly just below the hip. Pink nail polish still gleaming on the toes. The leg had been sawn off, according to the criminal complaint. Not torn, not ripped, sawn, with the precision of someone who had practiced. But that was just the beginning of a nightmare that would traumatize an entire community. April 5th, Milwaukee County Sheriff's deputies find more body parts on Milwaukee's north side, near where Saada's car had been torched. April 6th, as police canvass the area around 30th and Lisbon Avenue, they discover a human foot and what appeared to be human flesh. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Because while law enforcement was processing these crime scenes, Saad Robinson's family was doing something that would expose a disturbing truth about this investigation. They were finding evidence that police had missed. April 6th, the same day police found the foot. Sada's family went searching in the exact area that had already been combed by investigators. And they found her blanket, right there, in a location that had supposedly been thoroughly searched. April 7th, the family searches again. And again, they find human remains. Remains that brought police racing back to a scene they thought they had already processed. The message was clear. If you wanted to find Saad Robinson, you couldn't rely on law enforcement alone. What happened next showed the best of humanity in the face of unimaginable evil. Milwaukee rallied. Strangers became searchers. The community that had embraced Saad in life refused to abandon her in death. "This is someone's daughter," said community member Dee Dee David. "I don't know the family, but I want to make sure they know the community loves and supports them." Jasmine McCullum joined the search, saying, "I just know it's the right thing to do. At the end of the day, I didn't know her personally, but when we see her, we see our girls." April 12th, the day Maxwell Anderson was formally charged. While he sat in a courthouse facing murder charges, dozens of volunteers spread across Milwaukee County in a search effort that would last from 12:30 in the afternoon until sundown. Jackson Park, Pleasant Valley Park, the shoreline at Warnemont, the railroad tracks near 30th and Galena. Anywhere the criminal complaint mentioned, the community searched. As volunteer Rochelle Posey put it, "She's somebody's kid and she deserves justice. She deserves to be put to rest the correct way, and this isn't the way." Sada's uncle David Scarborough, too, captured the family's anguish. "My sister and parents won't stop shaking, and it's not because they're nervous. Imagine trying to bury your niece with no body for the service." Then, on April 18th, 16 days after that jogger found the first leg, Lake Michigan gave up more of its terrible secrets. 7:37 a.m. A citizen walking along a remote stretch of beach in South Milwaukee makes a horrifying discovery. A torso and an arm washed ashore about a quarter-mile from an apartment complex. Angela Buchanan, who lived nearby, captured the community's horror. Just the brutality of everything. Cutting up somebody's body is just, it's hard to even say the words. Nearby, resident Topanga Brogdon watched investigators from her backyard. They came back up carrying the body bag. Hectic, scary, kind of like shocking. But even this discovery, even after weeks of searching, wasn't the end. Nearly a month later, in May, another human arm, suspected to be Sada's, was discovered along the shoreline at Waukegan Municipal Beach in Illinois. The lake had carried her remains across state lines. Throughout all of this, questions mounted about law enforcement's response. When TMJ4 reporter Jenna Ray tracked down Milwaukee County Sheriff Danita Ball at the courthouse, the conversation was telling. "Can you tell me exactly what you guys have been doing over the last couple of weeks to try and find her?" Sheriff Ball's response, "That's still part of the ongoing investigation." But the family and community had a different perspective. They had been to multiple search sites with volunteers, yet there were no signs of law enforcement. Sada's cousin Kiana spoke for many when she said simply, "We just want to bring her back home." Law enforcement did eventually deploy more resources. Sonar boats searched Lake Michigan. Bruce's Legacy, a nonprofit maritime search and rescue team, conducted underwater searches at Warnemont Park. They found nothing. The lake had already given up what it was going to give up. But the most disturbing aspect of this entire search wasn't what was found. It was what wasn't found. To this day, not all of Saad Robinson's remains have been recovered. Maxwell Anderson scattered her across Milwaukee County so thoroughly that parts of this young woman, this daughter, this sister, this light in her community, may never be found. As volunteer Latoya Crawford put it, "I wouldn't be able to even sleep knowing that my baby is a little bit of everywhere in this city right now." But Milwaukee didn't give up. Even as the official searches wound down, volunteers continued combing beaches, parks, and railroad tracks. Because in a city that had embraced Saad Robinson in life, they weren't going to abandon her in death. Coming up, the community fights back. The racist backlash that tried to silence Sada's memory. The memorial that became a movement. And the question that still haunts Milwaukee. In a city where young black women go missing regularly, why did it take a dismemberment to get anyone's attention? But this story isn't just about a monster and his victim. It's about what happened when a community refused to let darkness win. In the face of unspeakable evil, Milwaukee showed the world what love looks like when it fights back. April 15, 2024. 3 days after Maxwell Anderson was formally charged with murder. Evening was falling on South 39th Street, and something extraordinary was about to happen. Dozens of community members gathered outside Maxwell Anderson's house. The last place Sod Robinson was seen alive, the place where she died, the place that had become synonymous with horror. But they weren't there for revenge. They weren't there for destruction. They were there to transform darkness into light. They called it a pink out. Sada's favorite color. For hours, strangers who had never met her covered Anderson's property with bright pink balloons, posters, flowers, and stuffed animals. This is a place of darkness, said Nicole Green, who drove over an hour to be there. And now it's a place of light. These weren't just friends and family. Most of these people had no direct connection to Sod Robinson. But as community supporter Stormy Walker explained, being here to support her mom, you can see that she is not alone. Everyone here is grieving with her. Nicole Green, a 50-year-old woman, captured why this mattered. Ms. Robinson is me. She's millions of women and young girls that look like me. I am 50 years old, and I can relate to her. All she wanted was love. By the time they were done, Anderson's house, his monument to evil, had been completely transformed. Pink covered everything. Even the for sale signs that had gone up were draped in pink. As Nicole Green put it, it is what is. But it doesn't have to stay what it is. And so we changed it. The pink out was just the beginning. The community response kept growing. April 19th, a candlelight vigil at Kilbourne Reservoir Park. Dozens gathered despite cold weather and wind, carrying pink balloons, sharing memories, demanding justice. Sada's sister Adriana Ream spoke through tears. Anybody who knew Sod knew that she was different from everybody else. She went through a lot even before she died, and she never let it break her. She was the strongest person I know. Her grandmother Linda Scarborough added, "She was my best friend. I will miss her. We had so much happiness and fun together." Between tears and memories, the crowd chanted in unison, "Justice for Sod. Justice for Sod." What started as grief was becoming something bigger. A movement. Community members like April Bentley, a survivor of human trafficking, saw themselves in Sada's story. I don't know her personally, but I know her personally. This hurt runs so deep. While law enforcement resources dwindled, volunteers like Dashit Crutchfield kept searching. The police is not doing enough. She is not an animal. She is a human being. But then, almost a year later, the community faced its greatest test. And it revealed just how deep racism runs, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy. January 2025. Milwaukee County Supervisor Juan Miguel Martinez worked with Sada's mother, Sheena Scarborough, to create a memorial at Warnemont Park, the place where her leg was found. A simple bench. $7,000 in public funding. It should have been uncontroversial. A memorial for a young woman who was murdered and dismembered. Instead, it unleashed a torrent of hate that shocked even seasoned officials. A flurry of racist emails, Martinez reported to the County Parks and Culture Committee. Emails asking, "Why should black folks get this when white folks don't get this?" County Supervisor Jack Ekblad described what he received. There were plenty of folks who just had honest, empathetic things to say, but there were others who really crossed several lines. County Supervisor Felicia Martin captured the racism plainly. There was an outcry saying taxpayers of Milwaukee County ought not to be paying for a memorial simply because another black person has lost their life. The family, already devastated by loss, now faced a choice no grieving mother should have to make: accept public funding and endure racist attacks, or withdraw their request and pay for the memorial themselves. Sada's cousin Kiki explained their decision. "I thought it was cool at first because obviously it was a memorial for Saad. But then things instantly changed for the family. We started getting negative feedback from community and people, and we just didn't want that." Sheena Scarborough, who had already buried her daughter in pieces, now had to make another impossible choice. She told Martinez to withdraw the resolution. She didn't want Sada's name attached to controversy. Martinez didn't mince words. "I just want to say shame on people for treating a grieving mother this way and making it a race thing, and treating her subhuman when it's absolutely unnecessary and absolutely unethical. And it shows the most disgusting and detestable parts of our society." But Milwaukee's community wouldn't let hate win. Omar Sheikh, co-owner of Carnivore Steakhouse and 3rd Street Market Hall, stepped forward. He organized a private fundraiser to cover the memorial costs. "This is the real Milwaukee," Sheikh declared. "Not the emails and racist emails. This is the real Milwaukee, showing love and support." The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, the GoFundMe that had $3,000 surged to nearly $33,000, with additional thousands raised through other channels. The money would fund not just the memorial, but scholarships, self-defense classes, and the first annual Sada's Voice Community Artist Gala, all in Sada's honor. As community member Barb Hull, who had known Saad from Pizza Shuttle, said at the fundraiser, "She was the most beautiful young lady that I ever met." But this controversy exposed something deeper, something that the community activists had been saying all along. As Erica Brown, Sada's family friend, pointed out, "We care about all missing women, but we recognize the disproportionate rate of us black women coming up missing, and we have to step up. The numbers are staggering. Black women make up a disproportionate percentage of missing persons cases, yet receive far less media attention and resources." It took a dismemberment to get Milwaukee's attention. It took body parts washing up on beaches to make people care about a 19-year-old black woman who had dreams of flying fighter jets. That's why Sheena Scarborough and Erica Brown launched Sada's Voice, a nonprofit dedicated to bringing resources, awareness, and policy change to families facing similar situations. As Sheena explained, "I did not ask to be chosen to be the voice for the community, and that my daughter was chosen as the angelic spirit to speak for all of the lost black and brown girls going missing. But she's doing it to save others from the pain I'm experiencing now. Because Saad speaks to me daily. What started as one family's nightmare became a community's calling. What began as racist emails became a fundraising triumph. What was meant to silence became a voice that couldn't be stopped. Because that's what Saad Robinson's story really is. It's not just about a monster who hunted and killed. It's about a community that refused to let darkness define them. Coming up, the legal battle begins. Maxwell Anderson faces a jury of his peers. And the question that will determine everything: can the digital evidence, the witness testimony, and the physical remains prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this man planned and executed the perfect murder? And now, after more than a year of horror, heartbreak, and community outrage, it all comes down to this. Tuesday, May 27, 2025. Milwaukee County Circuit Court. Judge Laura Crivello's courtroom on the 6th floor. The case that has captivated a nation is finally going to trial. State of Wisconsin versus Maxwell Anderson. The charges: first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, arson of property other than a building. If convicted on the homicide charge alone, Maxwell Anderson faces life in prison. At 8:30 a.m., the first pool of 50 potential jurors enters the courtroom. Another 30 will follow that afternoon. In a case this notorious, finding an impartial jury won't be easy. The prosecution has submitted a witness list with more than 250 names. Police officers, forensic scientists, family members, even a bus driver who captured crucial surveillance footage. For the prosecution, Assistant District Attorney Ian Vanskersen, the man who called this case the highest level of violence imaginable. For the defense, Anthony Cotton, a Waukesha criminal defense attorney who has spent months analyzing phone records, searching for an alibi that could save his client's life. This trial was supposed to happen in December 2024, but Anderson's defense team requested a delay, claiming they needed more time to analyze phone evidence that might prove their client's innocence. Sada's mother, Sheena Scarborough, was highly upset by the delay. Through her attorney, she expressed her frustration. Why was the information not requested when this case first started? Why were experts not retained when the entire world knew that one of the ways he was connected to this case was his cell phone? But Judge Crivello granted the delay, saying, "I do not want to create any type of issue on appeal. I am going to grant the defense's motion to adjourn." Now, 5 months later, there are no more delays. No more excuses. It's time for the truth. The prosecution's case is built on a mountain of evidence that reads like a digital age detective story. Surveillance footage from twisted fishermen showing Anderson and Saad together on their final date. Phone records tracking Sada's device from the restaurant to Duke's on Water to Anderson's house to the locations where her remains were found. Video from Cudahy High School showing a car matching Sada's Honda Civic driving toward Warnemont Park at 2:53 a.m. Bus surveillance footage showing Anderson getting on public transportation shortly after Sada's car was set on fire, wearing clothes that matched witness descriptions. Blood found on Anderson's bedroom walls and leading to his basement. Gasoline containers in his garage. The sex dungeon with restraints and torture implements. And perhaps most damning of all, the testimony from the confidential informant who says Anderson showed him the basement a month before the murder and detailed exactly how he planned to kill and dismember Saad Robinson. But Anderson's defense team isn't going down without a fight. They claim to have evidence that Anderson was using his home internet, presumably at his house, during the time frame when someone else would have been driving Sada's car around Milwaukee. It's a desperate gambit, an attempt to create reasonable doubt in the face of overwhelming evidence. But this trial isn't just about evidence and alibis. It's about a family that still doesn't have all the pieces of their daughter to bury. As Sada's uncle David Scarborough too said outside the courthouse, "My sister and parents won't stop shaking, and it ain't because they're nervous." Imagine trying to bury your niece with no body for the service. And Sheena Scarborough's raw grief. Who would do something like this to my beautiful baby? She hurt nobody. She harmed nobody. Assistant District Attorney Ian Vanskersen captured the horror of what Anderson did when he told the court. The allegations in the complaint are abhorrent. It is the highest level of violence imaginable. Against a 19-year-old woman whose only crime was saying yes to a first date. Milwaukee is watching. The nation is watching. And Saad Robinson's spirit, the girl who lit up every room she entered, who dreamed of flying fighter jets, who was the heart of Pizza Shuttle, is watching too. Over the next 2 weeks, a jury of Maxwell Anderson's peers will hear testimony that will test the limits of human endurance. They'll see crime scene photos that will haunt their dreams. They'll hear evidence of premeditation so cold, so calculated, that it defies comprehension. And then they'll be asked to do what the community of Milwaukee has already done. Render a verdict on a man who turned a first date into a death sentence. This is more than a murder trial. This is a reckoning. A moment when society looks evil in the face and says, "Not in our community. Not to our daughters. Not on our watch." Saad Robinson was failed by the dating app that connected her to a predator. She was failed by a system that didn't recognize the warning signs in Anderson's escalating violence against women. She was failed by a society that doesn't take missing black women seriously until their body parts wash up on beaches. But she won't be failed by this jury. She won't be failed by this community. She won't be failed by the justice system that is finally ready to hold her killer accountable. Because Saad Robinson's story doesn't end with her death. It doesn't end with her dismemberment. It doesn't end with racist emails trying to deny her a memorial. Her story ends with justice. Her story ends with a community that refused to let darkness win. Her story ends with Sada's voice, a foundation that will protect other young women from the predators who walk among us. Her story ends with love conquering hate and light defeating darkness, one verdict at a time. Maxwell Anderson thought he had committed the perfect crime. He thought his planning, his basement, his digital cleanup would let him get away with murder. He was wrong, dead wrong. And now it's time to pay. Justice for Saad Robinson. Justice for every missing woman whose story doesn't make headlines. Justice for a community that loved a girl so much they transformed a house of horrors into a monument of pink. This is her story. This is their reckoning. This is justice. Saad Carlina Robinson. May 10th, 2004 to April 1st, 2024. Daughter, sister, friend. The heart of Pizza Shuttle. A light that still shines in the darkness. She wanted to fly. And in the hearts of those who loved her, she always will. If you or someone you know needs help with domestic violence or dating safety, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or visit thehotline.org. If Saad Robinson's story shook you good, it should. Here's what you do right now. If you're dating online, screenshot this and create a safety plan. Share your location. Tell someone where you're going. Always. Like this video if her story mattered. Subscribe if you believe justice matters. Share this with someone who needs to see it, because your share could save a life. Don't let her death be in vain. Justice for Saad. Protection for the next Saad. Stay vigilant. Stay safe. Never stop fighting.
Happy birthday to you!
A New Jersey community is mourning the death of a Trenton mother and her 8th grade daughter. They were found dead in their home over the weekend. Both had been shot. The city's mayor called it a horrific act of violence.
When first responders arrived at the West State Street home in Trenton that April morning, they walked into a scene of haunting contradiction. Colorful birthday balloons still drifted against the ceiling, their ribbons swaying gently in the breeze from the open front door. A cake knife lay on the kitchen counter, frosting still clinging to its edge. Signs of celebration everywhere. But on the staircase leading to the 3rd floor, 40-year-old Malika Whiting lay motionless, blood pooling beneath her body. The vibrant woman known for her ever-changing hair colors and constant smile was silent forever. And upstairs, in her bedroom adorned with newly hung posters and birthday gifts still in their bags, 13-year-old Jaira Biggs was found. A child who would never reach high school, never wear the college t-shirt her mentor had promised her. Just 4 days earlier, Malika had posted photos of Jaira's birthday party. "Celebrating my baby girl turning 13. The comments section overflowed with heart emojis and congratulations. What no one saw was who else was watching those posts, who was seething with resentment from outside the celebration. What transforms a family's happiest moments into their last? What happens in a man's mind when he decides that if he can't be part of the joy, he'll replace it with unimaginable horror? On March 28th, Bahan Lynch posted on his Facebook page, "I try every day and it's still not good enough." 2 weeks later, he would arrive at his ex-girlfriend's home with a loaded gun and methodically extinguish 2 lives that were thriving without him. There were warning signs. There were patterns. There were moments when intervention might have saved them. Malika's 19-year-old son, Santana, found their bodies. In a video recorded just hours after the murders, his anguish echoes what too many families have experienced. "You just killed her. You took the one person that I know that never gave up and always told me that she would never leave me. But she did leave, not by choice, but because she dared to end a relationship with a man who couldn't accept rejection." By the end of this video, you'll recognize the warning signs that preceded this tragedy. Signs that might save someone you know, someone you love, maybe even yourself. Pay close attention to what happened in the weeks before these murders. The pattern isn't just familiar, it's predictable. And what's most terrifying is that right now, as you watch this, someone else is living through the early stages of the same deadly cycle. And Malika never saw it coming. Those birthday balloons were still floating when her life wasn't anymore. Hello and welcome to True Crime Tales HQ. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories. To understand the magnitude of what was lost on April 12th, you have to know who Malika Whiting was to everyone around her. At 40 years old, she wasn't just existing, she was thriving. Malika worked at Gabe Academy International School, where she spent her days nurturing young minds. Before that, she was a familiar face at the local Starbucks, remembered not just for her service, but for her presence. Trenton Mayor Reed Gusciora recalled her vividly, even years after she'd moved on from the coffee shop. She was always cheerful, he said, and colored her hair frequently. It was a small detail that spoke volumes about who Malika was, someone who embraced change, who found joy in expression, who left an impression. But it was at home where Malika truly shined. Her social media told the story of a mother whose world revolved around her 4 children. Birthday celebrations, school achievements, random Tuesday afternoons, all documented with the same pride and attention to detail. Each post punctuated with heart emojis, each caption radiating love. Her cousin Laquana Hardy's voice breaks as she describes the woman she knew. She was a loving mother. She was funny. She was loving. All she wanted was to have her kids raised properly. When someone is taken violently, we often focus on how they died. But understanding what was stolen requires knowing how they lived. And Malika lived for her children, especially her daughter Jara, whose life was cut tragically short alongside her mother's. At 13, Jara Biggs was just beginning to discover who she would become. A 7th grader with promising academics, she had already caught the attention of mentors who saw her potential. Jara was enrolled in the Gear Up program, designed to prepare students for college, a future she would never realize. Gabrielle Williams mentored Jara in the program and still struggles to speak of her in the past tense. "If you just take a look at her face," Williams said, her voice softening, "you'd just see that she was a sweet girl." After a moment, her tone changes, hardening with anger and grief. "I hope that justice gets served because at the end of the day, Jai didn't even get to reach high school. She's not going to get to grow up, and that's unfair." Jara had just celebrated her 13th birthday, a milestone marking her entrance into teenage years. The balloons from that celebration were still inflated when her life taken. Photos from the party show her beaming, surrounded by family, completely unaware that she had less than a week to live. When news of her death reached her classmates, the school district immediately deployed grief counselors. Children shouldn't have to process the murder of a peer, yet here they were, trying to understand why their friend wouldn't be returning to her desk on Monday. "My heart breaks for the kids," Williams said. "It breaks for her family, her siblings." The home on West State Street housed a blended family that Malika had carefully cultivated. 19-year-old Santana Maher was her oldest, followed by Jaira at 13 and 2 younger siblings, an 11-year-old brother and 6-year-old sister. Their daily life revolved around the routines that Malika established: school drop-offs, homework at the kitchen table, family dinners where everyone shared their day. Birthdays were special events, with Malika ensuring each child felt celebrated and seen. Holidays transformed their home into a showcase of seasonal joy. Now overnight, Santana has become the head of what remains of this family. His words, shared on a GoFundMe page created to support his siblings, reveal the crushing weight that has fallen onto his young shoulders. "My heart is beyond broken to lose the woman that gave me life. I know that life will be different without my other half, but it's up to me to continue to care for my younger siblings, my 6-year-old sister and 11-year-old brother." What Santana doesn't say, what perhaps he can't bring himself to articulate, is how this happened. How a man who once pretended to care for this family could destroy it so completely. How Bahin Lynch, rejected by Malika, decided that her children should pay the ultimate price for their mother's decision to seek happiness without him. The warning signs were there, hidden in plain sight. But like so many families living under the shadow of a possessive partner, the Whitings couldn't see how quickly possessiveness could turn deadly. How the same man who brought gifts one day could bring bullets the next. When Bahin Lynch first entered Malika's life, he seemed like the answer to a single mother's prayers. At 45, the forklift operator presented himself as stable, responsible, a man ready to step into a family role that needed filling. Friends recall seeing them together at community events, Lynch's hand protectively on Malika's back, his attention to her children seemingly genuine. He played the role of stepdad of the year, recalls one neighbor who asked not to be identified. Always bringing gifts for the kids, offering to help with school projects, showing up at their events, the perfect package. Social media photos from early in their relationship show Lynch smiling alongside Malika and her children at a local park, at birthday celebrations, at holiday gatherings. To outsiders, he appeared to be integrating seamlessly into the fabric of this ready-made family. But behind closed doors, a different reality was forming, one that Malika kept largely private. Friends now report that Lynch's attentiveness had a darker edge. His texts would come in rapid succession if Malika didn't respond quickly enough. His questions about her whereabouts became more frequent, more insistent. His offers to help with the children began to feel less like support and more like control. Looking back, says Laquana, there were signs we all missed. The way he'd sometimes speak over her. How her smile would tighten when he'd make certain comments. How she started checking her phone more anxiously when it buzzed. These subtle shifts, invisible to casual observers, but increasingly apparent to those closest to Malika, marked the beginning of the end. By early 2025, the relationship had begun to fracture visibly. Neighbors reported overhearing arguments. Lynch was seen less frequently at family gatherings. Malika's social media posts no longer featured him, a digital erasure that speaks volumes in our connected age. In March, Malika made the decision that would ultimately cost her life. She ended the relationship with Lynch. She just wanted peace, her cousin explains. She wanted to focus on her kids, on her work, on turning 40. She wanted to celebrate life without walking on eggshells. What Malika couldn't have known was that Lynch was already displaying the classic danger signs of an abuser facing rejection. His social media shifted dramatically, from casual life updates to cryptic messages of resentment and entitlement. On March 28th, just days after the breakup, he posted, "I try every day and it's still not good enough." The words seem innocuous on the surface, the kind of vague emotional statement that populates countless social media feeds. But to experts in domestic violence, such public declarations often serve as warning flares, signaling a dangerous sense of grievance building within. As March turned to April, Lynch's online behavior grew more concerning. While he didn't directly mention Malika, his posts began to alternate between self-pity and thinly veiled anger. "Some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone," read one post. "Sometimes you have to show people consequences," read another. Meanwhile, Malika's social media told a starkly different story. April brought multiple celebrations for her family, Easter gatherings with the children in new outfits, Jera's 13th birthday party with friends and family, and plans for Malika's own 40th birthday. Photos showed her smiling wider than she had in months. One image posted just 5 days before the murders shows her with freshly colored purple hair, captioned simply, "New decade, new me, 40 and thriving." Lynch saw it all. Digital forensics would later confirm that he visited Malika's profiles multiple times daily, scrolling through evidence of her happiness without him, watching as she rebuilt a life that no longer included him. Dr. Rachel Morrison, expert on domestic violence psychology, explains the deadly dynamic at play. For certain individuals with deep insecurity and control issues, seeing an ex-partner thriving becomes intolerable. It's not just that they've lost the relationship. It's that the other person's visible happiness serves as proof that they weren't essential, that life goes on without them. For someone whose identity is built around dominance and control, this reality can trigger extreme violence. These celebrations, normal family milestones that should have been joyous and unremarkable, became, in Lynch's distorted view, provocations. Each birthday balloon, each smiling photo, each new hair color became evidence of a crime against him, the crime of Malika's independence. Have you ever known someone who became dangerously obsessed with an ex-partner's happiness? Someone who couldn't bear to see another person move on? The signs are often visible in retrospect. The excessive monitoring of social media, the alternating patterns of pleading and resentment, the inability to accept that a relationship has ended. For Malika, these warning signs were building toward an unthinkable conclusion. As she planned her 40th birthday celebration, as she helped Jara hang new posters in her bedroom, as she embraced this new chapter of freedom and joy, Bayhan Lynch was making plans of his own. Plans that would ensure if he couldn't be part of Malika's celebrations, there would be nothing left to celebrate. April 12th, 2025 began like any other Saturday for the Whiting family. The morning sun filtered through the windows of their West State Street home, just steps away from the New Jersey State House. Investigators would later piece together those final hours through cell phone records, witness statements, and the digital footprints we all leave behind. At 7:43 a.m., Malika posted a photo of breakfast pancakes shaped like bunnies, with the caption, "Weekend treats for my little ones." Her younger children can be seen at the kitchen table, laughing. Jara, at 13, was sleeping in, a teenage privilege on a Saturday morning. By 8:30 a.m., neighbors reported seeing Malika outside, watering the small collection of potted plants on her front steps. She waved to a passing jogger. She called her mother, a brief 2-minute conversation about plans for Sunday dinner. Inside the home, remnants of recent celebrations remained. Easter decorations not yet put away, birthday balloons still buoyant enough to brush against the ceiling. A happy 13th birthday banner hung in the dining room. There were also newer balloons, purple and silver, perhaps for Malika's upcoming 40th. The house was alive with the ordinary sounds of a Saturday morning. Cartoons playing on the living room TV, the washer humming in the background, Jara's music drifting down from the 3rd floor as she finally got out of bed around 9:15. This was the life Malika had fought to create. Normal, stable, peaceful. A life without Bayhan Lynch. At approximately 9:45 a.m., according to neighbors' statements, Lynch's silver Jeep Grand Cherokee pulled up outside the Whiting home. He didn't call ahead. He didn't text. He simply arrived, unexpected and uninvited. What happens next can only be reconstructed through forensic evidence and the fragmented accounts of those nearby. Lynch entered the home. Whether Malika let him in or he used a key he never returned, we don't know. The younger children were reportedly in the backyard, momentarily out of sight. Eric Anderson, who lives 2 doors down, told investigators, "I heard raised voices. Not clear enough to make out words, but definitely an argument. I thought about going over, but..." His voice trails off, the weight of what-ifs hanging in the air. Dr. Elaine Foster, expert on domestic violence fatalities, explains the critical dynamics of these confrontations. The most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship is often after separation, when the abuser realizes they've truly lost control. These confrontations frequently begin with attempts at reconciliation, then rapidly escalate when those attempts are rejected. The transition from "I want you back" to "if I can't have you, no one will" can happen in minutes. Forensic evidence tells us the confrontation moved to the staircase leading to the 3rd floor. Blood spatter analysis suggests Malika was ascending the stairs, perhaps going to check on Jara, when the argument turned deadly. Lynch pulled out a handgun. The first shots were fired on that stairway. Malika Whiting, 40 years old, mother of 4, fell where she stood. The medical examiner would later confirm multiple gunshot wounds. But Lynch wasn't finished. Jara, hearing the gunshots and likely her mother's final cries, had hidden in her 3rd floor bedroom. The room where she'd just celebrated becoming a teenager. The room with college preparation books stacked on her desk. Evidence of dreams that would never materialize. Lynch ascended the remaining stairs, step by methodical step. He moved with purpose, not passion. This was no longer a crime of opportunity or sudden rage. Each step up that staircase represented a conscious choice to continue what he had started. He found Jara in her bedroom. Criminal psychologist Dr. Marvin Swanson offers this haunting insight. When a perpetrator doesn't stop at killing their primary target but extends the violence to children, it reveals an extreme form of possession and punishment. It's a twisted logic that says, "You took away what matters to me, so I'll take away what matters to you." Even in death, the victim is being punished through the loss of what they loved most. Investigators believe Jera's final moments were spent hiding in fear, perhaps trying to call for help, perhaps simply frozen in terror as the man who once brought her birthday presents now brought something unimaginable. Jera Biggs was pronounced dead at the scene, multiple gunshot wounds to her head and torso. At 10:30 a.m., a 911 call came in reporting 2 bodies at the West State Street address. The caller's identity remains protected, but police response was immediate. First responders arrived to find a scene of stark contrast, a home decorated for celebration that had become the site of execution. The front door was wide open, Officer Ramon Diaz noted in his report. From the doorway, you could see colorful balloons floating against the ceiling of the living room. It was immediately apparent this family had been celebrating something special. Police found Malika's body on the stairway leading to the 3rd floor, just as the dispatcher had been told. Ascending those same stairs, they discovered Jera in her bedroom. As word spread through the tight-knit neighborhood, residents gathered outside the police line. Many stood in silent shock. Some held each other, weeping. Others stared at the ordinary house with its cheerful potted plants, trying to reconcile the horror inside with the normalcy of its exterior. By noon, news vans had arrived. By 1 p.m., Malika's older son Santana had been notified and rushed home to find his life forever altered. His siblings now his responsibility, his mother and sister gone. And Bahan Lynch? He had disappeared, leaving behind only shell casings, blood, and birthday balloons, still gently swaying in the breeze from the open door. The ripples of violence spread outward from West State Street, touching first those closest to the epicenter. Santana Mar, just 19 years old, arrived at the police barricade to find his world shattered beyond recognition. Officers pulled him aside, away from the growing crowd and media presence. In those moments, Santana became not just an orphan, but the head of what remained of his family. The raw emotion of his loss was captured in a video he recorded shortly after, his voice breaking as he addressed the man who had destroyed his family. "You just killed her. You took the one person that I know that never gave up and always told me that she would never leave me." His words catch in his throat, the reality still settling into his consciousness. Like I never wish this on my worst enemy. Never wish this on nobody. The footage, later shared across social media, shows a young man grappling with a burden no teenager should bear, identifying the bodies of his mother and sister, comforting his younger siblings who couldn't comprehend the permanence of what had happened, and suddenly becoming responsible for a 6-year-old sister and 11-year-old brother. Within hours, Santana created a GoFundMe page, his grief still raw as he wrote, "My heart is beyond broken to lose the woman that gave me life. I know that life will be different without my other half, but it's up to me to continue to care for my younger siblings." The community response was immediate. Neighbors brought food, offered childcare, and contributed to the fund. Malika's former co-workers at Starbucks organized meal deliveries. Jera's school began collecting donations for funeral expenses, but nothing could fill the void left by this senseless act of violence. Meanwhile, the investigation was moving with methodical precision. Crime scene technicians worked through the day, documenting evidence, collecting shell casings, and taking blood samples for analysis. The silver Jeep Grand Cherokee parked next to the home became a focus of attention, yielding potential evidence about Lynch's arrival and state of mind. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, building a timeline through witness statements. Eric Anderson described hearing the argument. Another neighbor reported seeing Lynch's vehicle arrive. A third mentioned unusual activity around the home in days prior, perhaps surveillance, perhaps rehearsal. "We treat every homicide with the utmost seriousness," stated Detective Scott Peterson of the Mercer County Homicide Task Force. "But when children are involved, there's an additional urgency to our work. Every officer feels it." By Saturday evening, investigators had identified Bahan Lynch as their primary suspect. Records show he was located and detained that same day, initially on unrelated charges while the homicide case was built. This common tactic allowed law enforcement to keep him in custody while they assembled the evidence needed for murder charges. Forensic analysts worked through the night, processing the crime scene, analyzing digital evidence from phones and computers, and reconstructing the relationship history between Lynch and his victims. Text messages, social media posts, and witness statements painted a picture of escalating possessiveness, leading to deadly violence. One crucial piece of evidence emerged from Malika's phone, a series of increasingly threatening messages from Lynch in the weeks following their breakup. Messages he had apparently deleted from his own device, but which remained in her message history. These digital breadcrumbs would help prosecutors establish premeditation rather than a crime of passion. Beyond the immediate family and the investigation, the broader Trenton community struggled to process this tragedy occurring just steps from the State House, the seat of New Jersey's government, where laws are made and justice is supposed to be served. Mayor W. Reed Gusciora issued a statement that captured the city's collective grief. It is with profound sorrow and heartbreak that we learned of the senseless and devastating loss of Malika Whiting and her 13-year-old daughter, Jara Biggs. The news of this horrific act of violence has shaken our community. The family's roots are in the community and throughout the city. No mother and daughter should ever be taken from this world in such a tragic and violent way. The mayor knew Malika personally from her days working at Starbucks. She was always cheerful and colored her hair frequently, he recalled, humanizing her beyond the crime statistics that would soon include her name. Trenton Public Schools Superintendent James Earle immediately dispatched grief counselors to all city schools, recognizing that Jara's classmates would need support processing her murder. This is something people have a hard time processing. Rightfully so, Gusciora added, particularly when somebody is so young and innocent that they did not deserve this at all. A prayer vigil was organized at Cadwallader Park on West State Street, where community members gathered with candles and photos of Malika and Jara. Speakers alternated between celebrating the lives lost and calling for an end to domestic violence. Neighbor Eric Anderson, still visibly shaken days after witnessing the police response, summarized the community sentiment. "It's very senseless, you know, very senseless." His simple words captured what made this crime so difficult to process. The absolute lack of necessity, the preventable nature of the violence, the lives extinguished for nothing more than a man's wounded pride. What should communities do to prevent these domestic tragedies before they occur? How many warning signs go unnoticed or unreported? How many lives might be saved if we recognize the danger signs in relationships around us? For Trenton, a city already struggling with various forms of violence, this murder of a mother and child represented something even more troubling. Violence that had entered the most intimate spaces, the places where safety should be guaranteed. As one community activist noted at the vigil, we can put more police on the streets, we can add security cameras, we can fight gang violence, but how do we protect people from those they once trusted? How do we see the danger before it's too late? These questions hung in the air over Trenton, unanswered, as the legal process against Bayhan Lynch was just beginning. While the Whiting family began the impossible task of planning 2 funerals, the wheels of justice turned with deliberate, some would say frustrating, precision. In the hours following the murders, police located and detained Bayhan Lynch, not on murder charges, but on unrelated weapons offenses. This common tactic gave investigators time to build an airtight case while keeping their prime suspect off the streets. To the public, however, it appeared as though the killer might somehow escape the full weight of justice. "It's standard procedure," explains former prosecutor James Donovan. "In high-profile cases like this, rushing to file murder charges before the evidence is properly processed can backfire. Investigators get one chance to do this right. But for a family devastated by loss, the procedural caution felt like indifference. The frustration boiled over when Malika's daughter took to social media with raw, unfiltered grief that resonated across platforms. "I never been in a million years. I never want nobody feel this pain," she said through tears, her voice breaking. "That was my mom. If anybody know me, this know I left my... Like y'all, I can't even take this." Her emotional testimony continued as she processed her trauma in real time. "You killed the baby. Killed the baby." He walked out smiling. Sick-minded person. The video spread rapidly, garnering hundreds of thousands of views within hours. Comments flooded in demanding justice, tagging law enforcement agencies, and putting public pressure on officials to act swiftly. Behind the scenes, detectives from the Mercer County Homicide Task Force worked methodically, building a case that would withstand scrutiny. They processed the crime scene evidence, analyzed phone records, and collected witness statements. They documented the history of the relationship, establishing the timeline of events leading up to the murders. Detective Scott Peterson, leading the investigation, later acknowledged the challenges of the case. When emotions run high, the pressure to rush is immense. But rushing leads to mistakes, and mistakes lead to killers walking free. We needed to be thorough. The forensic evidence was compelling. Ballistics matched a weapon registered to Lynch. DNA evidence placed him at the scene. Cell tower data tracked his movements to and from the home at the time of the murders. Text messages revealed his state of mind in the days leading up to the killings. On Thursday, April 17th, 5 days after the murders, the Mercer County Prosecutor's Office announced formal charges against Bahan Lynch. 2 counts of first-degree murder, along with weapons charges including possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, unlawful possession of a weapon, and certain persons not to possess a firearm. The charges reflect the severity of these heinous crimes, Prosecutor Janetta D. Marbury stated in the announcement. We will be filing a motion to detain the defendant pending trial to ensure the safety of the community. For the Whiting family, the charges brought a measure of relief, though nothing could fill the void left by Malika and Jara's absence. Justice isn't bringing them back, Santana Mar said quietly after the charges were announced. But at least he can't hurt anyone else's mother, anyone else's sister. The road to trial would be long, with months of hearings, motions, and preparations ahead. But with Lynch held without bail at the Mercer County Correction Center, the immediate threat had been contained. As Mayor Gusciora promised in his statement to the community, Trenton will not rest until justice is served, and we will continue to work every day to build a safer future for all our residents. For Malika and Jara, justice would come too late, but perhaps for another family, another mother considering leaving a controlling relationship, another child caught in the crossfire of domestic violence, the swift response to this tragedy might signal that the system can work, even if it sometimes works too slowly. At noon on Monday, April 21st, the community gathered at Calvary Pentecostal Church on Parkway Avenue in Trenton. The line of mourners stretched around the block, family, friends, co-workers, classmates, and strangers touched by the tragedy. They came to say goodbye to Malika Whiting and her daughter Jara Biggs, 2 lives extinguished at the very moment they were most joyfully blooming. Inside, photographs captured Malika's vibrant spirit, her ever-changing hair colors, her wide smile, her arms almost always wrapped around her children. Photos of Jara showed a young girl on the cusp of becoming herself, awkward, beautiful, full of potential and promise. It's very unfair. It's hurtful. I'm angry, said Gabrielle Williams, Jara's mentor from the Gear Up program, her voice thick with emotion. I'm angry because it's senseless. It's just senseless. A mother and her daughter, especially someone like Jai and Malika, it doesn't make any sense to me. Williams had brought a college t-shirt to place in Jara's casket, a symbol of the future that had been stolen from her. She's not going to get to grow up, and that's unfair, she said, the simplicity of her words carrying the weight of all that would never be. As the community mourned, practical concerns loomed for the surviving family members. At just 19, Santana Meher faced the overwhelming task of caring for his younger siblings, an 11-year-old brother and 6-year-old sister who couldn't fully comprehend the permanence of their loss. Community organizations have stepped forward with offers of counseling, childcare assistance, and educational support. But money and services can't erase the trauma these children have experienced. Dr. James Kelly, child psychologist specializing in trauma, explains the long-term implications. What these children have endured creates ripple effects that can last a lifetime. Beyond the immediate grief, they're processing complex trauma that can affect their ability to form healthy relationships, their sense of safety in the world, and their understanding of what love looks like. The surviving children face what experts call generational trauma, patterns of loss and violence that can echo through families unless intervention breaks the cycle. The most important factor in these children's recovery will be stable, consistent support, Dr. Kelly continues. Communities rallying around survivors in the immediate aftermath is vital, but these families need sustained support systems that last years, not weeks. For the Trenton community, supporting the Whiting children has become a commitment rather than a momentary response, a recognition that healing from such profound loss requires more than just initial outpourings of sympathy. The tragedy of Malika and Jara's deaths contains lessons that could save others, if we're willing to learn them. Domestic violence experts point to several critical warning signs that were present in Malika's relationship with Lynch. Excessive jealousy and possessiveness disguised as devotion. Controlling behaviors masked as concern or protection. Isolation from friends and family. Monitoring of communications and whereabouts. Rapid mood swings and unpredictable anger. Inability to accept rejection or relationship endings. Threats of self-harm if the relationship ends. History of troubled previous relationships. Perhaps most importantly, escalation of controlling behaviors after a breakup and obsessive monitoring of an ex-partner's happiness or new life. The most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is not during it, but when leaving it, explains Trenton domestic violence advocate Sophia Martinez. When creating a safety plan, the period immediately after separation requires the highest level of caution and support. For those in similar situations, experts recommend document concerning behaviors and incidents. Create a safety plan before leaving the relationship. Share your concerns with trusted friends or family. Contact domestic violence resources for guidance specific to your situation. Consider legal protections like restraining orders, but with professional guidance about timing. If possible, relocate temporarily to a location unknown to the abuser. Change routines and be cautious about social media posts that reveal locations or activities. The most important thing to remember is that you don't have to figure this out alone, Martinez emphasizes. There are professionals who understand these dynamics and can help create safety plans specific to your circumstances. Malika's cousin Laquana Hardy offers perhaps the most powerful message from this tragedy. I pray that each and every one of us evaluates the relationships we're in, because this can be any of us. This can be any of us. As our time with this story draws to a close, we return to the image where we began. Those birthday balloons still floating against the ceiling of the Whiting home, silent witnesses to both celebration and tragedy. The balloons represent something profound about domestic violence homicides, their preventable nature. Unlike random acts of violence or natural disasters, these deaths follow recognizable patterns. They leave warning signs. They provide opportunities for intervention. The balloons remain a symbol of all Malika and Jara should have experienced. More birthdays, more celebrations, more ordinary days filled with the simple joy of being alive and together. Mayor Gushiora's words echo this sentiment. No mother and daughter should ever be taken from this world in such a tragic and violent way. The Trenton community has committed to remembering Malika and Jara not just as victims, but as vibrant lives worth celebrating. A mother who colored her hair on a whim and always had a smile for customers. A teenager with college dreams and a sweet disposition. Their story matters not just because of how they died, but because of how they lived, and because their deaths might help others live. What will you do differently after hearing this story? Who in your life needs to hear this warning? The signs of dangerous relationships surround us, in our families, among our friends, in our communities. Recognizing them isn't about paranoia, it's about prevention. It's about ensuring that birthday balloons remain symbols of celebration, not memorials. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need this information. Your comment below could help others recognize patterns in their own relationships. And by subscribing to this channel, you help ensure these important stories reach those who most need to hear them. For Malika and Jara, it's too late. But for someone watching right now, this information could make all the difference.